let's hit it with the intro music and see if it works. All right, I am going to hit play and see how this works. Hey, everybody. Here we go. Welcome to Kidmin Talk number 193. And if you're watching this, I'll find out if anybody is. I am conducting an experiment today called Kidmin Talk Live. So my good friend Aaron, who's our Kidology programmer, technical whiz, helps us out of jams whenever we get him. Hey, he's in the chat because he's helping me out here. We are going to be experimenting with something new. I've heard the requests, and I've heard everybody saying, hey, we want video. Come back with video. We're going to continue with the audio that we push out through Buzzsprout, to iHeart Kidmin, Apple Podcasts, and a whole bunch of other places. We're going to experiment with Rumble, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and in theory, all those are coming together. So hey, Aaron, let me know how the audio's going. We were going to just run a test, but I thought, hey, let's just do a full-blown podcast unless we afford this and delete everything. This will be, in theory, Kidmin Talk number 193, and our topic is going to be that's the new tablet. So volume down, he said. Well, that's mute. Let me pull this down. There we go. Is that a little bit better? I just did the volume on my computer. I'm not sure how to actually turn it down, but it's over. We're done with the intro. So if you're viewing this, drop into wherever you're putting it. Go to the chat and do me a favor. Just say hello. Let me know where you're watching it, and because we want to test whether this is working in those three major platforms. Locals is new. I'm not going to talk about that today because I'm still figuring out locals, but I have started a locals channel, and I'm learning that, so I'm not going to talk much about that till I figure it out, but that's going to be a new area that hopefully I'm going to be adding some new content and some new opportunities to connect with my listeners. So before we get started, I want to give you just a little exciting news about a film that's coming out. This is not an official plug. This is just something I want to give you a heads up about. If you've not heard about the greatest Christmas pageant ever, it is coming soon, obviously, for the Christmas season. I was lucky enough that I got a couple of connections. I was able to see a pre-screening of it. My whole family did. And we darkened the room. We popped our popcorn. We got our snacks. And we knew it would be a good movie. It's produced by the same guy who does The Chosen. So we knew we were in for a treat. But it exceeded my expectations. Fantastic film. So as you start to see the trailers drop and the promo for it, don't just take your family, make a church event out of it, or just rally your friends to go see this film. Not only support the film, we always say support Christian films and support wholesome films because we want more like that, but it really has a fantastic message. It's a great comedy. You're going to laugh all the way through it, but it has a really good message in it. I had not read the original book, so I went into it not knowing the story. Now, my wife had read the book as a kid, and she knew the story, so she laughed and resonated with it in a different way, seeing the book brought to life, because she was like, oh, I remember that. Oh, I remember that. I didn't know what to expect, so I'm the movie predictor, you know, and I was wrong on most of my predictions, but I loved the message that Christmas is not for Christians. You know, just as Mary and Joseph were unwanted, there's some characters in this movie that are unwanted at church. I don't want to spoil too much of it, but they not only discover the true meaning of Christmas, which of course is a common theme, but it was just delivered in such a great way. So anyway, that's a free plug for the movie. I'm so excited about it. We will be promoting it on Kidology. We're going to throw some banner ads up, and we're excited to partner with them. But just as we do this test podcast, I just thought, man, I just got to see it. I'm excited about it, and I just wanted to mention that right here at the beginning. And I also just want to pass a little time to see if it is working. I know Aaron's probably checking YouTube, checking Facebook on our Kidology page to see if it's working there, and our YouTube channel, and hopefully it is. I don't want to do that while I'm going, because I'm going to just continue on with the podcast. One of the number one questions that I get on Kidology, and that I see very often in children's ministry Facebook groups, not only the Kidology group, which I'd love for you to join. You can just go to kidology.org/Facebook, and that will redirect you to the longer URL for our Facebook group. And I see it in the I Love Kidmin group. That's a huge group, so often you get a lot more traction in there. Our group's more focused to questions for me and about content and resources available on Kidology. But the question I get is, hey, I'm new to children's ministry, and what are the first things that I should do? And there are so many great comments and great advice in those threads. In fact, always when you've got a good question like that and you're going to post it in a Facebook group, one of my little pet peeves is that people ask the questions before first searching if someone else has asked it. If it's a common question, sometimes you should just search for that question, because probably it's been asked before, and there are posts with literally, I shouldn't say hundreds, but lots of answers to those questions. Doesn't mean you can't post it fresh, but often there's some good content in there already. But I'm just going to fly through 10 things that you should do if you are starting out in children's ministry. And if you've got some questions, please drop them in the comments. I want to maybe answer some of those and interact with you live here on this podcast here on this Friday afternoon while I'm doing this. All right. So number one, and people always laugh when I do this. This is something I talk about often in my workshop. So number one is give up. What do you mean? I just got the job. I'm not going to quit. And I didn't say quit. I said give up. And what I mean by give up is give up the ministry to God. When we take stewardship of a ministry, not ownership, but stewardship of a ministry, we need to never forget that the ministry belongs to God. And we are just a stewardship. I'm often reminded of that scene in The Lord of the Rings. I believe it's the second one, The Two Towers, where in Gondor there is this throne and it's empty, but there's this evil little steward who has a little chair next to the throne. And in some ways, that's us. Hopefully we're not evil. But the throne is not empty. Jesus is on the throne. But we are a steward, and our job is to steward our ministry. Jesus is on the throne. And sometimes we kind of get ourselves on the throne. We think it's our responsibility to run the ministry, and we kind of take ownership of the ministry. When Jesus, it's his ministry. It's his kingdom. We're just the steward of it. And sometimes it's kind of like Gondor. The king feels like he's off doing other things. He's not. The analogy breaks down a little. But our job is just to steward it. And what that means is there's no reason ever to be stressed about the ministry, worried about the ministry, wringing our hands over the ministry, because it's his. We have a responsibility to work hard, to do our best, to be resourceful, to be creative, to make sure we're doing everything we can within our gifts and talents and resources and intellect to run that ministry the best we can. But at the end of the day, when the work day's up, to be done and to say, I've done my best. This is what I can do, and I'll be back tomorrow to work on it some more, but not to be stressed about it. In fact, I often say if you're stressed about your ministry, that is an insult to God, because your stress says to God, you're failing, you're not able to do this, and you need my help. And that honestly is an insult to God. So give up the stress, give up the ministry, remind yourself and remind your leaders, hey, this is God's ministry. He is capable of bringing us the workers we need. He's capable of providing the resources we need. And understand that sometimes when God says no to something, what he's actually saying is, I'm not behind this. Maybe we're trying to do more than God is asking us to do. So number one, give it up. All right, realize it's God's, and he's asked you to lead it, but it's his. Number two, be observant. When you start out, you're going to come with tons of ideas, tons of resources, things you've done in the past, things you're super excited about, things you want to do, things you've seen other churches do that have excited you and inspired you, and so you want to do those things. But start by observing. Do a lot of observing and look at how things are done. Try to find out why they're being done, along with observing. And I'll just kind of tuck this in. Still, number 2, ask a lot of questions. That's part of observing. In fact, I'll just swing right into number 2, or number 3 is listen. So observe and listen. Ask a lot of questions. Find out why things are the way they are. Before you're too quick to change things, you want to make sure you learn as much as you can about the ministry, why things are being done the way they're done, what some of the history is. Find out what the needs are by listening to people, and then you begin, number 4, to form a vision for the ministry. What is a vision? All right, the Bible says without vision the people perish. Vision, and there's whole books and whole articles and whole resources on Kidology on vision by myself and by other leaders that have submitted them. But vision, succinctly, is what would it look like when you are done. And yes, there are times when you are done with the ministry. You have fulfilled your vision. And at that point, you either need a new vision or you need a new ministry. And sometimes that's your prayer. God, do you have a new vision for me here? Or God, do you have a new ministry for me? And that's an exciting place to be at. But when you're new, you need to ask God for a vision. God, what do you want me to accomplish here? What will this look like when I'm done? And be creative, and don't be stifled by what's taking place now. You have to almost be willing to say, is it going to be completely different? Is it going to be modified? Include others in that process, because it's not your vision, it's God's vision. And in forming that vision, you do need the voices of others. We just went through an exciting process at my church with multiple meetings, dreaming, sharing, formulating strategies. And then we just finished a big presentation to our senior leadership at our church, where our whole team presented visionary ideas and proposals to our senior leadership. And now they're taking all that information and they're gathering that from multiple ministries at our church. And now they're retreating and they're seeking God. And then they're going to be coming back to all the ministries with what they believe our priorities should be, and the priorities of the church, all within the context of the larger vision and mission of the church as we prepare for next year. It's a really exciting process. Number 5, build a team. You cannot do the ministry yourself. And I don't care how small or how big your church is, you need a team. In fact, some people have said to me, well, Karl, our church is really small. I don't have enough people to build a team. You do. Your team might be 2 people. But there are people passionate about your ministry. In fact, one small church that I went to, I asked the search committee that hired me, I said, I need you guys to be my leadership team for the first year, because you guys obviously are passionate about the kids ministry, because you were the ones involved in hiring a children's pastor. So as part of my being hired, I want you guys to help me lead this ministry for the first year, and then help me identify the leaders who will replace you. And some of them worked their way off that team. Some got excited and stayed on the team. But I made it very clear, you're not hiring me to run the ministry. You're hiring me to lead the ministry. And to lead it, I'm going to need leaders to team up with me to advance this ministry. You know, in my first ministry, I didn't know this, and I did lead the whole thing. And I was young, I was excited, so I ran everything. And you know what? When I left that ministry, there was some issues in the church, and it was unhealthy, and I had to leave. The kids ministry was doing fantastic, but when I left, everything fell apart. And I've gone back over the years, and they're doing great now. But when I went back several times in the years that followed to visit, people would say, "Oh, Karl, we miss you. When you were here, it was the golden era of children's ministry." They meant that as a compliment, and I received it as such. But privately, I took that as an indictment of my leadership, because when I left, everything crumbled. And what that meant was not that I was a great kids pastor, as they like to say. What that meant was I was not a great leader, because I had not built a team and structures and things so that when I left, the ministry could carry on. It all fell apart when I left. And I kind of knew that was going to happen when I left. And I was young, I was a rookie, so I have no problem excusing my immaturity and my lack of experience, but I learned from that, so that in every ministry after that, I built a team. And after that, when I go back and visit, they're happy to see me, but they never say the ministry suffered when I left. In fact, every ministry I've been at since then, one of my leaders has gone on to become a children's pastor. And that's what I'm most proud of. Not how great the ministry was when I was there, but the fact that through building a leadership team, I was used by God to create future Christian leaders and future children's pastors. And that, to me, is the crown of my ministry. Not any great event, not numbers, not, well, kids led to Christ. That's obviously the ultimate goal. But being able to reproduce myself so that they can lead kids to Christ and the ministry can continue to flourish. So you've got to build a team. Number 6, while you're new, is when you first start out, one of the biggest things that you can do, and you may not even share this with your leadership team, this may be something that I'm just telling you is something you need to focus on, is improving the perception of the children's ministry. Find out what people really think about it. In the Ultimate Toolbox for Children's Ministry and on Kidology, you'll find a tool called Reflections of Our Kids Ministry. Never, ever, ever do a survey of everyone. If you do a survey, all you're going to get are the negative ones. You'll be very discouraged because negative people always chime up. Positive people don't because they're happy. So what you do is you do a Reflections of Our Kids Ministry is a term that I've used where I hand pick people that I want to get an opinion of. So you go to select parents, select leaders, select individuals, and you say, hey, I want to get an idea of the health of our kids ministry. And so I have selected, and say it's 20 people, that I want their opinion and I need your opinion. They will give it back to you. Don't all pick, rubber stamps. Don't pick all fans. Pick some positive people, but pick some other parents. If somebody's complained or they're negative, pick them too. And then collect that information and then find out what the perception of the kids ministry is. Is it disorganized? Is it dirty? Is it chaotic? Is it understaffed? Whatever the perception is, and focus on that. It's another way to say it would be put the fires out, but find out where the felt needs are. They may not be things that you think are a great priority, but if you address those things right away, you're going to win some allegiance. You're going to get some capital in the bank that you can spend on other things that are more important to you and maybe not important to others, like theology or structure or scope and sequence or doctrine or whatever. But you gotta start with felt needs. Number 7, look at the basics. All right, you got to start with the basics. Every championship team, you'll often hear in the interviews, how did you win? And they'll say, we went back to the basics. Right? Basics win championships in sports, and basics win championships in ministry as well. All right, hey, if you're just joining me on Facebook Live or YouTube or what's the third one, Rumble, hey, drop a comment, say hello, let me know where you're watching and how you found out about this feed, because I'm experimenting with live Kidmin Talk and pushing it out to several platforms and doing this podcast this way because I want to know that it's working, but I also just want to do some content, and then I'm going to push it out to the audio podcast like I normally do after this podcast is done. So would do me great if you would put a comment in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you drop in there as well. But what are some of the basics? Look at the structure of your kids ministry. How is it organized? Is there a better way to organize it? Look at your staffing. How are things staffed? Is there a way to organize that? Definitely look at safety and security. Do you have a secure check-in? Do you have a never alone policy? Do you need to address safety and security? That's of the utmost important. If you need an assessment of your safety, go to kidology.org/kidcheck. We've partnered with them. They'll give you a discount your first year if you need to implement security planning in your church, or they'll even just give you a free consultation if you need to talk through child safety at your church. They'd be more than happy to do that with you, even if ultimately you don't end up using KidCheck. They care that much about the safety of your kids and your ministry, and they'd be happy to be a consultant for you. Obviously, they hope you'll use KidCheck, but they will still walk you through the process of evaluating your kids' ministry and are your kids safe and are they secure? And then what is your strategies? Look at your strategies for welcoming kids, your strategies for follow-up, your strategies for discipleship. Look over the things that you want to accomplish as a kids ministry, and do you have a documented strategy for how you accomplish those things? What systems do you have in place? All right, how are you collecting data? How are you scheduling your volunteers? It's a little bit of in the weeds stuff, but that stuff's important, and that can be the difference between a chaotic ministry and a organized one that grows. All right, and documenting that stuff is really helpful, because if you're reinventing the wheel constantly, you're spending time on that stuff and not reaching kids and discipling kids. And lastly, supplies. Like, you might need to clean out some closets. You might need to figure out what supplies are needed. Nothing's more frustrating to volunteers than not having the stuff that they need, or maybe there's an unspoken that they're expected to buy that stuff out of their own pocket. You can have volunteers quitting because they can't afford to volunteer, and you don't realize that you're not equipping them, and serving the church is actually a financial burden to them. So look at the basics of the ministry, and then address the big picture. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, what are you trying to accomplish? All right, sometimes we're just doing church. We're just trying to get Sunday staffed, get the classes going, but you got to back up and say, and you get together with your team and say, what are our big wins? And we say, leading kids to Christ. Okay, well, for leading kids to Christ, how many kids have we led to Christ in the last year? We don't know. Oh, so we're in the business of leading kids to Christ, and we don't know how many kids we've led to Christ. There's some systems and reporting and follow-up that we need to have in place. Oh, and what else are we discipling? Okay, what does disciple look like? How are we discipling kids? Is this something that's happening by accident? Like, we just think we're discipling kids? So we need to break that down. What does that mean? What does that look like? We want kids to know how to use their Bibles. Okay, how many kids bring Bible to churches? How many kids are memorizing the books of the Bible? How many kids, if you said John 3:16, could find John 3:16 in their Bible? Maybe we need to be more intentional about teaching kids the skills they need to be a disciple and a follower of Jesus Christ. So sometimes you find out, okay, maybe I need to actually stop doing some of the fluff stuff that's fun, but I need to narrow it down to what's actually really important to me. Are the things you have in place really working toward that big picture? Or do you need to push some things aside so you can focus on those big picture things? Because at the end of the day, it really is about leading kids to Christ and teaching them to obey everything that I've commanded you. See, we know the Great Commission: go into all the world, make disciples, baptize in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. People forget there's two halves to the Great Commission, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. That's that Christian education component. And so we got to make sure we're doing that. So number 3 under this is evaluate everything: your curriculum, your events, your staff, your room usage, your calendaring, and do they point toward your main point? Do you have a mission statement that's out of vision? Like at our church, our mission statement, you can steal this, but you should come up with your own, is we want every child who comes through our doors to feel loved, come to know Christ, and then find a place where they can grow. And we break that down through fun and life-changing experiences. And so in our brainstorming and in our planning and in our volunteer on-ramping, we talk about, we want every child who comes through our doors, we talk about how do we get them to come through our doors, to feel loved. What do we do to make kids feel loved? I can unpack that for you. To feel loved and find a place to come to know Christ. How often do we share the gospel? How do we share the gospel? Are our teachers prepared to share the gospel? How do we follow up with them when they have shared the gospel? And find a place where they can grow through fun. What are we doing to make our ministry fun and kid-friendly? You know, I mean, you've probably seen on Kidology my Erzuka when we celebrate our visitors, but through life-changing experiences. What kind of experiences are we creating for kids that will be life-changing? So once you have that mission statement and you've defined, here's our big picture, here's why we exist, then you start to answer those tough, they're actually simple, but tough questions of how are we doing that? All right, number 9, we're almost done, is follow God first. There's going to be a lot of voices telling you what to do. I'm one of those voices, right? You're listening to me. At the end of the day, it's listen to God. What is God telling you to do? Take input from books, from websites, from podcasts, from parents, from teachers, the boss, from everybody. But at the end of the day, What is God asking you to do? So you need to spend time in prayer. I pull away every week in my office. I get out of my office. I find a quiet place and I pray. And I just talk to God. I have my to-do list. I'm like, God, I got more on my to-do list than I can do every week. What is the priority? What do you want me to do? And sometimes it means not getting some stuff done. There's a little book, I think Andy Stanley wrote it, called Choosing to Cheat. Sounds horrible. But what he's talking about is every week you have to choose to cheat. You have to choose to cheat someone. You can never please everyone. So who are you going to cheat? Are you going to cheat God? Are you going to cheat your family? Are you going to cheat your children? Or who are you going to disappoint? Because sometimes we choose to cheat the wrong people. We want to keep the parents happy. We want to keep the volunteers happy. We want to keep the boss happy. We want to keep the coworkers happy. And then the people who aren't happy are the people who are most important to us. So we've got to follow God first. And lastly, number 10, be people focused, not program focused. All right. We get really worried about our programs, how they're budgeted, resourced, how they're run, how they're staffed, how they look, how they're marketed. It can be all about the programs. But Jesus didn't say to go into all the world and make programs. He said go into all the world and reach people, right? Get them saved and get them discipled. Sometimes that means a program's got to die. Or sometimes that means to be the program's only going to be 60, 70% as great as you want it to be. Sometimes that means letting the program suffer a little bit, all right? Pursuing excellence, I used to have that on this list. I deleted it because sometimes in my pursuit of excellence, I wasn't following God. In my pursuit of excellence, I was plowing over people. In my pursuit of excellence, I wasn't prioritizing the things that matter most. I still believe in excellence. I want everything to be excellent, all right? But we have to be focused on people because at the end of the day, it's about reaching people for Christ, all right? So there's 10 things to focus on as you are new to ministry. But interestingly enough, you could be in ministry for 10, 20 years. You still need to give the ministry up. You never stop observing. You definitely never stop listening. You're continually asking God for a clearer vision or a renewed vision. You never stop using a team. You never stop paying attention to what is the perception of the ministry. Because remember, perception is reality. All right. We could be doing all the right things and our heart can be in the right place, but we can give the wrong impression. That's something I constantly have to work on and I struggle with because we're all flawed. And so we can come off the wrong way. So we have to always remain teachable and be willing to work on ourselves and our ministry so that we give off the right perception. And we got to stick to the basics. All right. The ministry grows, the ministry gets exciting. We start adding stuff and we get fancy and flashy and we can start to neglect the basics. And we got to focus on the big picture. We need to constantly go back to our mission. We're trying to reach kids and help them feel loved, come to know Christ, and find a place they can grow, like not neglecting Sunday morning, your lessons. I think it was Superman 4 that had Richard Pryor in it. And Superman got to a point. It was a little bit because of the red kryptonite or something. But there was this bus dangling on a bridge. He's like, I'll get there. I'm Superman, right? And he didn't get there in time because he got a little cocky. He got a little prideful. He got a little full of himself, thinking, well, I'm Superman, right? And there's a danger of us getting to a point where we're like, I'm great at this. I can wing it. All right. I don't need to prepare my lesson. I just get in front of the kids and wow them. And all of a sudden our quality starts to go down. God's blessing on our life starts to go down. We've got to stick to that big picture. So we got to keep focusing on God, following God first, and be focused on people. All right. Now I'm still learning this. So I am going to click back to my media and I'm going to go to sound and I'm going to hit my outro music. And there it is. My sound is not as loud as before. Hey, this was a test. I'm going to find out if it worked good. I hope it did. We'd love to hear your feedback in the comments on Facebook or YouTube or wherever. And then I'm going to push this out through the audio podcast as well. But thanks for joining me. Let me know what you think of Kidmin Talk Live. I may pick a regular time each week. Or I may do it as I'm able, but I'm excited about doing it this way because I think it could lend to more interaction and more opportunity to show you things, media clips and stuff like that. So I look forward to hearing back from you, and after the music ends,